My name is Letha Palmer, and at 58 years old, I thought I knew my 17-year-old son Dylan better than anyone. Lately, though, he had been distant, secretive, coming home late with vague explanations. After a string of break ins in our neighborhood, I installed security cameras that had been broken for weeks. The repair technician finally fixed them while Dylan was at school, but with the chaos at work, I completely forgot to tell him. What I discovered when I checked that footage changed everything between us. If you're watching this now, please let me know where you are from. In the comments, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories that might just change how you see the people closest to you. Life as a widow wasn't something I had ever prepared for. When my husband Mark passed away 6 years ago from a sudden heart attack, it felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Since then, it had been just Dylan and me in our modest three-bedroom home in Portland. The neighborhood was nice enough. Tree-lined streets, houses with small but well-kept yards, and neighbors who mostly minded their own business, but would still wave hello when you passed by. I worked as an administrator at Portland Memorial Hospital, overseeing scheduling for 3 departments. The job was demanding but stable, allowing me to provide for Dylan and myself comfortably enough. We weren't rich by any means, but we managed. For years after Mark died, Dylan and I had been incredibly close. He would tell me about his day at school, his friends, his dreams of becoming an engineer like his father. We would have movie nights on Fridays with homemade pizza and weekend hikes when the weather permitted. He was my rock as much as I was his. But over the past 6 months, something had changed. The shift was subtle at first, declining my offers to watch a movie, responding with one-word answers when I asked about his day. Then it became more pronounced. The once outgoing, cheerful boy who loved to tell me elaborate stories about his day had become withdrawn and secretive. His room, previously always open to me, was now often locked. His phone would be quickly put away when I entered a room. "It is just normal teenage stuff, Letha," my colleague Janet had reassured me when I mentioned my concerns. They all go through that phase where parents suddenly become the enemy. But it felt like more than that. Dylan's grades had started slipping. His math teacher, Mr. Gonzalez, had called to express concern about his falling asleep in class. He had started skipping basketball practice, something he had previously loved, and his mood swings were extreme. 1 minute seemingly fine, the next snapping at me for asking simple questions. "Are you okay, sweetie?" I had asked one evening after he came home unusually late. "I'm fine, Mom. Why do you always have to interrogate me?" he had replied, brushing past me to go upstairs. I worried endlessly. Was it drugs? Bad influences at school? Depression? I tried to talk to him several times, but each attempt was met with more resistance, more irritation. Eventually, I decided to give him space, hoping that whatever phase he was going through would pass. Then the break-ins started. 3 houses in our neighborhood had been burglarized in the span of 2 weeks. Nothing major had been stolen, some cash, electronics, jewelry. But it was enough to put everyone on edge. The neighborhood association had called an emergency meeting. "We need to look out for each other," Mrs. Donovan from across the street had said. "Install security systems, report any suspicious activity." That weekend, I had the security company install cameras at our front door, back door, and overlooking our driveway. Dylan had rolled his eyes when the technician was explaining the system to me. "This is overkill, Mom. Nobody is going to rob us," he had said. The system worked fine for about 2 weeks, then suddenly stopped recording. With everything going on at work, budget cuts, staffing shortages, a new electronic record system that no one could figure out, calling the security company kept slipping my mind. 3 weeks later, I finally managed to schedule a repair. The technician came on a Tuesday while Dylan was at school. He fixed the system, showed me how to access the footage on my laptop, and left. I had fully intended to tell Dylan that evening, but then a crisis erupted at work. One of our doctors had scheduled 2 surgeries at the same time, and I spent hours on the phone rearranging operating rooms and staff. By the time I got home, exhausted, Dylan was already locked in his room, and the repaired cameras were the last thing on my mind. The first time I noticed money missing from my wallet, I thought I had simply miscounted or spent more than I remembered. $50, not a small amount, but not enough to make me immediately suspicious of theft. But when it happened again, the following week, $70 this time, I knew something was wrong. Small items began disappearing around the house too. A silver letter opener that had belonged to Mark, a pair of cufflinks, an old watch, things that had monetary value but also sentimental importance. Dylan, have you seen your father's watch anywhere? I asked one morning over breakfast. The one with the brown leather strap. No, he said without looking up from his cereal. Why would I take Dad's watch? But I hadn't accused him of taking it. His defensive response only heightened my suspicion. Then there were the new things. Expensive things. A pair of limited edition sneakers that I knew cost well over $200. A new gaming headset. A leather jacket that couldn't have been cheap. Where did you get the money for those shoes? I asked when he first wore them home. Saved up my allowance, he muttered. But his $20 weekly allowance would have taken months to amount to enough for those shoes, and I knew he had spent his previous allowance on fast food and movies with friends. The strange phone calls started around the same time. His phone would ring at odd hours, 11 p.m., 6 a.m., and he would take the calls in his room speaking in hushed tones. I would hear snippets as I passed by his door. Yeah, I can get it. No, she doesn't suspect anything. Tomorrow at the usual spot. New friends started calling for him too, names I had never heard before. When I asked about them, Dylan would be vague. Just some guys from school. But when I pressed for details, what classes they shared, where they lived, he would get irritated and change the subject. His room, once a place where I was welcome to come in and chat, tidy up or drop off clean laundry, was now off limits. The door was always locked when he wasn't home, and he would react with anger if I knocked when he was inside. Can you not give me any privacy? He would shout through the door. One afternoon I overheard him on the phone in the backyard. I was in the kitchen washing dishes, the window open to let in the spring breeze. I need more time, he was saying, his voice tense. No, I can't get that much by Friday. I know I promised, but... When he noticed me at the window, he immediately ended the call and came inside, brushing past me without a word. The fears started to consume me. Was he dealing drugs? Gambling? Had he fallen in with some sort of gang? Was he being pressured or threatened? The worst scenarios played out in my mind as I lay awake night after night. I tried talking to his teachers to see if they had noticed anything concerning. His English teacher, Miss Patterson, had seen a decline in the quality of his work, but attributed it to typical senioritis. His basketball coach mentioned the missed practices, but assumed it was due to the pressure of senior year and college applications. When I tried to talk to Dylan directly, the conversation quickly turned hostile. Why are you spying on me? He demanded when I mentioned the phone calls I had overheard. I'm not spying, Dylan. I'm concerned. You're acting differently and things are disappearing from the house. I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. So now you are accusing me of stealing? Great, Mom. Really great. He had stormed out of the house after that, not returning until well after midnight. Janet, my friend and colleague, tried to reassure me during our lunch breaks. Teenagers are aliens, Letha. My son went through a phase where he would only wear black and refuse to speak to us for days at a time. Now he's a perfectly normal college student who calls me twice a week. I tried to take comfort in her words, remembering my own rebellious teenage years, the arguments with my parents, the bad decisions, the secrets. But this felt different, more serious. And without Mark to share the burden of worry, every concern weighed twice as heavily on my shoulders. As the weeks passed, the distance between Dylan and me grew. The happy, open relationship we had shared for so many years seemed like a distant memory. I found myself living with a stranger, a young man with my son's face, but whose thoughts and actions were a mystery to me. And all the while, the security cameras silently recorded storing footage that I had no idea would soon change everything. It was a Wednesday when everything came to a head. I had left work early, a migraine brewing behind my eyes that even my prescription medication couldn't touch. The hospital had been chaos. A multi-car accident had filled the emergency room, and scheduling had been a nightmare. My boss had taken one look at my pale face and sent me home. I expected the house to be empty. Dylan should have been at basketball practice until 5, giving me a few hours of quiet to lie down in the darkened bedroom and wait for the pain to subside. But as I pulled into our driveway at 2:30, I noticed the garage door was partially open. Dylan's backpack sat just inside, tossed carelessly on the concrete. A spike of anxiety shot through me temporarily, overriding the throbbing in my head. Why was Dylan's backpack here? Had he come home sick? Was he skipping practice again? I entered the house quietly, calling his name. No response. A quick check confirmed what I already suspected. He wasn't home. His backpack was here, but he was gone. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was Coach Reynolds. "Is Dylan okay? Third practice. He's missed this month. Concerned about his spot on the team." The migraine was forgotten as a cold wave of fear washed over me. Dylan had lied about where he was going. Again. And this time, I had no idea where he might be or who he might be with. I sank onto the couch, my hands shaking slightly, as I texted back to the coach that I would speak with Dylan and get back to him. Then I sat in the silent house, my mind racing with possibilities, each worse than the last. Had Dylan fallen in with drug dealers? Was he in danger? Was he the one stealing from our home and others in the neighborhood? The weight of not knowing pressed down on me until I could barely breathe. I remembered the promise I had made to Mark. As he lay in the hospital bed, his last words to me before the heart attack took him from us. "Take care of our boy, Letha. Keep him safe." I had tried. God knows I had tried. But how could I keep him safe if I didn't know what dangers he was facing the security cameras? The thought hit me suddenly. They had been repaired a week ago. There would be footage of Dylan coming and going, possibly with friends I didn't know. Maybe even evidence of what he was involved in. Instantly, guilt flooded me. Was I really considering spying on my own son, invading his privacy in such a fundamental way? What kind of mother does that? A desperate one, I told myself. One who has exhausted all other options. I sat at the kitchen table for nearly 20 minutes, the battle raging inside me. Respect his privacy or potentially save him from something dangerous. Trust that he was going through a phase, or acknowledge that something serious might be happening. Be the mother who waited patiently for her son to come around, or be the mother who took action before it was too late. In the end, it was the memory of Mark's face that decided me. He wouldn't have hesitated. He would have done whatever was necessary to protect our son, even from himself. With trembling hands, I opened my laptop and navigated to the security system's website. I entered the username and password the technician had set up and waited as the system loaded. The interface was simple enough: a calendar on the left showing dates with recorded footage, a main viewing window, and controls beneath. I clicked on the current date and was met with a technical error. Frustration surged through me as I tried again, only to receive the same error message. After 3 more attempts and a call to the security company's technical support, I finally gained access to the footage. The cameras had captured everything for the past week: comings and goings, from the front door, the back door, the driveway. Hours of footage that might reveal what my son was hiding. I started with yesterday, fast-forwarding through the morning hours until I saw Dylan leaving for school at his usual time, backpack slung over one shoulder. Nothing unusual there. I continued watching as the mail carrier delivered packages, as a neighbor's cat slinked across our front yard as the afternoon shadows lengthened across the driveway. Then, at 2:15 p.m., when Dylan should have been in his last period class, I saw him coming up the front walk, but he wasn't alone. The footage showed Dylan approaching our front door. But what made me gasp was the elderly woman leaning heavily on his arm. It was Mrs. Abernathy from 3 houses down, a widow in her 80s who rarely left her home anymore due to severe arthritis. Dylan was helping her up our front steps, one arm around her waist, the other holding her hand to steady her. I watched in confusion as my son, who I suspected of all manner of wrongdoing, gently guided the old woman into our house. The timestamp showed they remained inside for nearly an hour. When they emerged, Mrs. Abernathy was smiling, patting Dylan's cheek in that grandmotherly way. He helped her carefully down the steps and walked her back in the direction of her house, out of the camera's view. What in the world? I whispered to the empty kitchen. I clicked on footage from the day before. This time Dylan came home at 4 p.m., again when he should have been at basketball practice. He was carrying what looked like grocery bags, and right behind him was Mr. Thompson, our 82-year-old neighbor, and a Vietnam veteran who used a walker to get around. Dylan held the door for him, helped him inside, and again, they stayed for about an hour before Dylan walked him home. My confusion mounting, I began checking other days, other times. There was Dylan shoveling the snow from Mrs. Finch's walkway after the unexpected April snowfall last week. There he was again, walking the Jacobsons' golden retriever, when I knew they were out of town visiting their daughter. Another clip showed him carrying a large bag of dog food to Mrs. Rivera's house. She had recently had hip surgery and couldn't drive. As I watched more footage, a pattern emerged. Dylan was helping people, elderly neighbors mainly. He was doing errands for them, keeping them company, helping with tasks they couldn't easily do themselves. But why the secrecy? Why lie about where he was going? And what about the missing money, the new expensive items? Then I found footage from late Friday night. Dylan was sitting at the kitchen table counting money. My first thought was vindication. Here was proof he was involved in something illegal. But as I watched, he sorted the bills into small piles, placed each pile in an envelope, and wrote something on each one. Before he gathered them up, the camera caught a clear image of one envelope's writing, Mrs. A. Grocery Fund. My breath caught. Was he collecting money for our neighbors? But why would he need to take money from my purse for that? More footage revealed more puzzling behavior. Dylan meeting with what appeared to be a homeless man behind the shopping center, giving him food, clothes, and cash. Dylan working late in our garage building. What looked like small wooden structures. Free libraries, I would later learn. Dylan giving computer lessons to Mr. Peterson, who had recently complained to me about not being able to video chat with his grandchildren. In one clip, Dylan met with a group of teens at the park. I recognized a few of them from his school. They appeared to be coordinating something, looking at maps and lists. Was this the group I had feared was a bad influence? Were they actually organizing some kind of community service? As the pieces slowly came together, I felt a strange mix of relief, confusion, and if I'm being honest, a touch of hurt. My son wasn't in trouble. He wasn't involved in drugs or theft or whatever other terrible scenarios my mind had conjured. He was secretly helping people running what appeared to be some kind of one-man or one small group community service operation. But why hide it? Why not tell me? Why the locked door? The defensive responses? The lies about where he was going? And what about the missing items from our home? I was still puzzling over these questions, still flipping through footage, when I heard the front door open. The sound of Dylan's footsteps in the hallway. The moment of truth had arrived. I closed my laptop quickly as Dylan walked into the kitchen, his face changing from neutral to guarded when he saw me sitting there. He hadn't expected me to be home. "I thought you were working until 6, he said, dropping his keys on the counter. "Migraine," I replied, simply studying his face. This young man with his father's eyes and my stubborn chin. Who was he really? What else didn't I know about him? "So," I began, my heart pounding. Basketball practice was good today. A flicker of something, guilt, crossed his face. "Yeah, fine." "That's interesting," I said, keeping my voice steady, "because Coach Reynolds texted me wondering why you missed practice." Again. Dylan's shoulders slumped slightly, but his expression quickly hardened. You checking up on me now? Where were you, Dylan? Out, with friends. It's not a big deal. Mrs. Abernathy isn't exactly who I'd call one of your friends, I said quietly. His head snapped up, eyes wide with surprise, before narrowing in realization. You checked the cameras, he said, voice flat. You spied on me. Yes, I admitted, seeing no point in denying it. I was worried about you, Dylan. You've been secretive, distant. Money has gone missing. Things have disappeared from the house. What was I supposed to think? You were supposed to trust me, he shot back, voice rising. But instead you installed cameras to spy on me in my own home. They weren't to spy on you. They were because of the break-ins, and you know it. And I wouldn't have checked the footage if you hadn't been lying to me for months about where you were and what you were doing. We stood facing each other across the kitchen, both breathing hard, years of unspoken feelings suddenly rushing to the surface. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked finally, my voice softer now. Why all the secrecy about helping the neighbors? Dylan looked away, his jaw working as if he was chewing over his words carefully before speaking. It started as a school thing, he said, finally dropping into a chair at the table. Mr. Reeves' social studies class. We had to do 20 hours of community service this semester. I was going to just volunteer at a soup kitchen or something. But then Mrs. Abernathy fell on her front steps, and I helped her up, and she was telling me how hard it is for her to get groceries. He shrugged, looking embarrassed. So I started helping her with shopping. And then Mr. Thompson saw me helping her and asked if I could pick up his prescription sometime. And it just grew from there. But why not tell me? I would have been proud of you, Dylan. His laugh was bitter. Right, just like Dad would have been proud, huh? The great Mark Palmer, football star, engineering genius, man's man. You think he would have been proud to see his son playing nursemaid to a bunch of old people? The words hit me like a physical blow. Is that what this is about? Your father? You don't get it, Mom, Dylan said, standing up again, pacing the small kitchen. Dad was this larger-than-life figure. Everyone respected him. He built things. He was tough. And I'm not him. I'm not good at sports. I'm not great at math. I'm not going to be an engineer. Dylan, your father would have been proud of you, no matter what you did, as long as you were being true to yourself. Yeah, well, I'll never know, will I? The pain in his voice was raw, fresh, even after 6 years. So instead of telling me about this project, you started lying. Skipping basketball, missing classes. It got bigger than I expected, he admitted. The neighbors needed more help than I thought. And then I met John, the homeless guy you probably saw in the videos. He's a veteran, did you know that? Served in Afghanistan. Has a degree in carpentry, but he can't hold down a job because of his PTSD. Dylan pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. He's been helping me build the little free pantries. Those box things you probably saw me working on in the garage. We're putting them up around town in areas where people might need free food but are too proud to go to a food bank. That's amazing, Dylan. Truly. But the missing money, your father's watch. He had the grace to look ashamed. I took the money, yes. I'm sorry. I needed it for supplies, for groceries, for the neighbors. But I was going to pay it back, I swear. I've been mowing lawns on weekends to make extra cash. And the watch? The other missing items. Dylan got up and left the room without a word. I heard him go upstairs, then return a moment later with a small box. He placed it on the table and opened it. Inside were all the missing items. Mark's watch, the cufflinks, the letter opener. I never took them to sell them or anything, he said quickly, seeing my expression. I don't know. I wanted something of Dad's with me. When I'm helping people, especially the older men like Mr. Thompson, I feel close to Dad somehow. Like maybe this is something he would have done. I've been carrying his watch with me. Oh, Dylan, I said, my voice breaking. I know it was wrong to take the money without asking. And to lie about where I was going. I didn't want the guys at school to know what I was doing. You know how they are. If they found out I was spending my afternoons helping old Mrs. Abernathy with her grocery shopping instead of playing basketball. They might think you're a compassionate human being, I suggested gently. They'd think I was soft, Dylan said flatly. A mama's boy. It's hard enough being the kid whose dad died, whose mom checks up on him all the time. I didn't need to add volunteers with old people to the list of reasons to get picked on. I wanted to argue to tell him that any friend who would mock him for helping others wasn't a friend worth having. But I remembered being 17, the desperate need to fit in to seem cool. And Dylan, still grieving his father, in ways I hadn't fully understood until now, was especially vulnerable to peer pressure. There's more, he said, reaching into his backpack. He pulled out a notebook and slid it across the table to me. I opened it to find page after page of neat entries. Names, dates, tasks completed, needs to be addressed. It was a detailed log of all the people he had helped over the past 6 months, all the tasks he had completed, all the hours he had volunteered. 216 hours, Dylan said quietly. That's how much community service I've done since January. Mr. Reeves only required 20. Tucked into the back of the notebook was an official-looking letter. I pulled it out and read it, my vision blurring with tears halfway through. It was from the school principal nominating Dylan for a regional youth service award. He had kept that from me too. Why did you hide this? I asked, waving the letter. Dylan, this is incredible. I'm so proud of you. He looked down at his hands. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. It's just something I needed to do. For myself, for Dad. In that moment, looking at my son's downturned face, I realized I had been so busy worrying about him following in his father's footsteps that I had failed to see him forging his own path. One of compassion, of service, of quiet strength. Different from his father's path, yes, but no less honorable. I'm sorry. We both said at the same time, then gave watery laughs. I'm sorry I invaded your privacy, I said. I was just so worried. And I'm sorry I lied to you and took the money, Dylan replied. I should have just told you what I was doing. Yes, you should have. I agreed, reaching across the table to take his hand. But I understand why you didn't. Just no more secrets, okay? And if you need money for supplies or groceries for the neighbors, ask me. I'd be happy to contribute. Really? He asked, looking surprised. Of course. In fact, I'd like to help with the project if you'll let me. The hospital might even be willing to donate some supplies for your pantry boxes. For the first time in months, I saw a genuine smile spread across my son's face. The smile that was so like his father's, it made my heart ache. That would be awesome, Mom, he said. And I think Dad would have been proud, don't you? I squeezed his hand, thinking of Mark and how he would have reacted to discovering his son's secret community service mission. Your father would have been bursting with pride, Dylan, just like I am. We sat there at the kitchen table as the afternoon light slanted through the windows, beginning to bridge the gulf that had grown between us. There was still hurt to heal, trust to rebuild, but for the first time in months, I felt hope that we would find our way back to each other. And it had taken a broken security camera repaired and forgotten to show me that sometimes what looks like trouble is actually something beautiful in disguise. In the months that followed our confrontation, everything changed. Once the secret was out, Dylan no longer had to hide his community service work, and I could openly support him. We became partners in what we now called the Palmer Project, named in honor of Mark. I used my hospital connections to secure donations of non-perishable food items for the little free pantries that Dylan and John, the homeless veteran, were building. My co-workers, once they heard about what Dylan was doing, eagerly contributed toiletries, baby supplies, and winter clothing. Dylan introduced me properly to all the elderly neighbors he had been helping. Mrs. Abernathy pinched my cheek and told me I had raised a fine young gentleman. Mr. Thompson showed me pictures of his granddaughter that Dylan had taught him how to access on his new tablet. Mrs. Finch insisted on baking us a pie every Sunday, despite my protests that we were supposed to be helping her. Helping goes both ways, Letha, she told me firmly. Your boy shovels my walk and carries my groceries. The least I can do is bake him a pie. The change in Dylan himself was even more remarkable. Once he no longer had to compartmentalize his life, student and athlete in one box, secret community volunteer in another. He seemed more integrated, more whole. The defensive edge that had characterized our interactions for months melted away. He started talking to me again. Really talking. About his day, his thoughts, his feelings. One evening, as we were assembling care packages at the kitchen table, he brought up his father. I dream about Dad sometimes, he said, carefully placing toothpaste and soap into a gallon Ziploc bag. Not as much as I used to, but still sometimes. What happens in the dreams? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual, while my heart thumped with emotion. Dylan rarely spoke about Mark anymore. Different things. Sometimes we're just fishing like we used to, at Crescent Lake. Sometimes he's helping me with homework. But lately, he paused, focusing intently on the care package in front of him. Lately, he's been watching me help people. Like I'll be fixing Mrs. Rivera's leaky faucet, and I'll turn around and Dad will be standing in the doorway, just watching, smiling. I swallowed hard against the lump in my throat. That sounds like a nice dream. Yeah, Dylan said softly. I think maybe this whole project started because I was missing him so much. Like if I couldn't have him around to be proud of me, at least I could do things that would have made him proud. He was always proud of you, Dylan. From the day you were born. I know that now, he said, meeting my eyes. And I think helping people is just who I am. It's not about Dad anymore, or not only about him. It makes me feel good. Like I'm making a difference, you know. I nodded, unable to speak, past the emotion clogging my throat. My son was growing into a man of compassion and integrity, finding his way through grief towards something meaningful and true. What more could any parent want? Dylan's school took notice of his initiative too. What had begun as a simple 20-hour community service requirement for Mr. Reeves's social studies class had evolved into something much bigger. The principal, Dr. Harmon, invited Dylan to speak at an assembly about the little free pantries and his work with the elderly in our neighborhood. I sat in the back of the auditorium, watching as my formerly secretive son stood in front of his peers and spoke passionately about community needs and how even small actions could make a big difference. He didn't stammer or shuffle or seem embarrassed. He stood tall, looking so much like his father that my breath caught. We all have neighbors who need help, he concluded. And we all have something to give. Time, skills, a strong back, a listening ear. The question is, will we choose to give it? The applause was thunderous. Afterwards, instead of the mockery Dylan had feared, classmates approached him wanting to get involved. The Palmer Project gained volunteers momentum visibility. The local newspaper ran a story. A small grant came in from a community foundation. Dylan was invited to be on a youth leadership panel at City Hall. But the most meaningful change was in our relationship. The trust that had been broken began to heal. The distance between us closed. We were a team again, mother and son, moving together, through the world supporting each other. One Saturday, as we were delivering food to a new little free pantry location, Dylan turned to me suddenly. You know what's weird, Mom? If you hadn't checked that security camera footage, I'd still be sneaking around lying to you, thinking I had to hide this part of myself. And I'd still be worrying myself sick, thinking you were in some kind of trouble. I replied. I guess sometimes privacy isn't the most important thing. He mused. Sometimes you need someone to see what you're hiding, even from yourself. His words struck me deeply. How often do we hide our true selves, our deepest needs and finest qualities, thinking they make us vulnerable when actually they make us who we are? As Dylan graduated high school and prepared for college, with a significant scholarship based partly on his community service record, I reflected on the unlikely path we had traveled. A broken security camera repaired and forgotten. A worried mother checking footage out of fear. A secret mission of compassion discovered by accident. all leading to this, my son finding his purpose, our relationship renewed, and strengthened our community a little better for our efforts. Dylan chose to study social work in college, a far cry from the engineering path his father had taken but perfect for him. I want to help people figure out systems, he explained, navigate resources, get what they need, like what we've been doing but with professional training. Mark would indeed have been proud, not because Dylan was following in his footsteps, but because he was walking confidently in his own. As for me, I learned a valuable lesson about assumptions, about how quick we are to fear the worst when someone we love changes in ways we don't understand, about how secrets kept out of shame or fear can build walls between people who should be closest, and about how sometimes what looks like trouble is actually something beautiful taking shape in the darkness waiting to be discovered. I still have those security cameras. They still record who comes and goes from our home. But now when I check the footage occasionally, it's not out of suspicion or fear. It's to see Dylan and his friends loading up supplies for their latest community project. It's to smile at the elderly neighbors who now regularly visit for tea or help with their smartphones. It's to witness the small, everyday acts of kindness that might otherwise go unseen. Have you ever discovered something unexpected about someone you thought you knew well? Have you ever jumped to the wrong conclusion about a loved one's behavior? If you have experienced a moment of revelation like mine, please share your story in the comments below. And if you found meaning in our journey, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about the surprising ways we connect, disconnect, and find our way back to each other. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful truths are hidden in plain sight. We just need the courage to really look. Thank you for listening, and may you find unexpected joy in your own relationships today.